This is the Danger Close podcast, Beyond the Books with me, Jack Carr. Welcome to the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Navy Federal Credit Union. This is a best of episode featuring hunters and outdoorsmen. Donnie Vincent, Cam Haynes, Robbie Kroger, Brad Leone, John Barklow, Jim Shockey, and John Norris. Here they are. Enjoy. Donnie Vincent. Donnie is an explorer, biologist, filmmaker, conservationist, and sportsman. He received his degree in wildlife biology from the University of Minnesota and was able to pursue his passion for nature with research projects in Bangladesh to study Bengal tigers and Alaska to study spawning salmon. Since then, he has produced award-winning films, including The Other Side, Terra Nova, The Rivers Divide, and The Winds of Adak. Here's Donnie.
For me, training is, I'm a mental mess, Jack, and I'm a person that I really suffer from lack of self-confidence. I have my whole life, so I need to exercise and I need to immerse myself in being outside, and those two things keep me balanced. And not only push weights, but I also need to fat tire bike, and I need to rock, and I need to do cold weather things. And I just need to do it.
Oh, I've heard you say that before about the confidence, and I've seen you talk about it with your bow, in the past, confidence there. And, if you never mentioned it, I never would have guessed that. No one would have ever guessed that, seeing what you do and how disciplined you are in your approach and how thoughtful you are in your writing and your films and everything. It's just incredible.
I appreciate that.
Oh, of course. And none of that would point to a lack of self-confidence. It points to being thoughtful, which is something I appreciate about you and all that you do. But I never would have thought that you needed to stay disciplined because of a lack of self-confidence in anything, because you're so inspirational in all that you do for so many people, me included, of course. But I need to take some lessons, because when we first got here, man, we got out of the car in Park City, my wife and I, and we were in the Smith's parking lot, the grocery store. And we're looking around and we're like, oh my, people are in some pretty good shape up here in Park City. I mean, every other person's an Olympic athlete, they're coming here for the lifestyle. This is pre-pandemic, so they weren't fleeing from anything. They were coming here because of that lifestyle. And a lot of people had, hit their number in New York and California and kind of had to take a breath and spend time with family. But as part of that, it was kind of a more holistic approach to life, and being in shape was certainly a part of that. And it was noticeable. When we first got here, I was working out with these guys. Awesome. They got Hobie Darling, who was the former CEO of Skull Candy, and these guys, Eric Snyder. These guys were crushing it. Every morning at 5, we would meet up and just do these insane workouts these guys would put together. And it was good for about a year. Then the first book came out, and then I kept going through there. Even on book tour, I was getting after it. And then the second book came out, and it was like, okay, now you're juggling 2 things and you're writing the third and all this. And so in order to build the foundation, is what I tell myself anyway, a few things had to get prioritized over others. And the fitness dropped down a couple notches, essentially off the board. But it is, I was chasing after our little guy yesterday on a motorcycle. He's got this little 125, and he was like zipping down the road by the house, and I was just sprinting after him because I'm just not quite so sure that he can handle himself on it yet. It's a bigger bike. And he came to a stop, and then I came to a stop next to him, and I was like, I got to get back after it. Like, this is the whole point of working out, is to be in shape for life. And I'm having a little, I'm feeling it, chasing after our little guy. But you're up at 4 and you're getting at it, but it's not just the workouts. It's also a little like mental quiet time. You get to read, you get to do a few other things in there, not just throw the weights around and shoot the bow, but you get to kind of take a breath before the rest of the world wakes up. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. I like the quiet time. And I had a guy, that little short video that I put together called Who We Are, amazing. Why We Hunt.
Oh yeah.
Appreciate that. But I had this guy a few years ago. He wrote me, and I haven't heard from him in about a year, and I hope it's not for the reason I'm about to tell you, but this guy wrote me, he'd write me about every week. And he was, this gentleman was suicidal. And he just said, hey, I contemplate every day taking my life. And he said, and I'm not a hunter, but he said, when I start going down that dark hallway, I watch Who We Are. And I watched it a couple of times, and he said it just kind of makes me feel human, and it makes me want to get up and kind of move my body and get outside. And he said that's kind of my equalizer. And then he's like, I essentially kind of forget about it for 24 hours. And so I kind of do the same thing. Like I have to, if I'm getting down in the dumps, because I don't really ever talk about this, but I really don't want to participate in life at all. Like I love people. I love that you're writing books. I would love to travel and see you. I love doing different things, but I don't want to participate in social media. I haven't, like you said, some people hit their number and move to Salt Lake City. Like I want to hit my number, which I don't even know what it is, but I want to hit my number and I want to cancel my Instagram account. I want to cancel my Facebook account. I want to remove myself from life, and I just want to fish and bow hunt and hike and mountain bike and explore. That's all I want to do. I don't need literally anything else. I don't need another fancy meal. I don't need another Broadway show. I know that's closed-minded, but I don't really need that stuff. So when I start kind of going down the road of everything catching up to me, I need to get outside and go for a walk. And I'm so easily entertained. I'm hoping you've read Aldo Leopold.
Oh yeah.
You read?
Yeah. Sand County Almanac.
Yeah. So his Sand County Almanac, I can't speak like he can. I'm not as in tune with nature as he was, but yesterday I was walking in the pouring rain on a piece of woods just east of here, and I bumped a woodcock, a little woodland migratory bird.
Yeah.
And that made my whole day. Like awesome. Seeing that woodcock, and he jumped up and he buzzed out, and they have a really long bill. They have really big eyes and a little body and big wings. And when they fly away, it's like a rough grouse. You can hear that bass, that pop, 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 and there's a like a helicopter kind of. And I saw that, and it just is almost like a reset button to me, right? Or if I catch a fish and I get to hold the fish and see it, and so oftentimes, like this gentleman who would watch Who We Are, like if I start to get down in the dumps, and actually something with one of your books, but I will read some Aldo Leopold, or I'll listen to a book of yours. I have this fantasy, if you will, like this malice fantasy, or this gross masochistic fantasy of, do you know when your character Reese and his friend, is his name Rafe?
Yep.
In the Gentleman in Montana?
Yep, that's Rafe.
Is that right? Yeah, and those people that come, the assassins that come to kill everyone when they're in Montana. Yeah, I sometimes, devil's hand, if I can't sleep, if I can't sleep at night, I will pretend that a bunch of assassins are coming to the cabin to kill me, and I'll start planning my program of where I'm going to go, what guns I'm going to grab, what am I going to do, and then I'll fall asleep. You'll kind of lull me into that. And so,
yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, maybe it's about being prepped for life or something like that. Maybe there's something in there where you're thinking about being prepped for anything, because the hunting and the protection of defense of life are so connected. And, you talk about it in Who We Are. You talk about that connection to the past and hunting being in our DNA. And only recently have we had the luxury, quote unquote, of not having to put food on the table for ourselves, going to the grocery store and just throwing into the cart without thought. I think about that, and I thought about that as I was writing Savage Son. I was thinking about Who We Are, and then I was thinking about how closely intertwined that is with protecting the gift of life, and then protecting those who you are responsible for: kids, spouse, tribe, community, country, whatever it might be. And once again, that same sliver of human existence where we've been able to go to the grocery store, that's about the same time we've been able to call 911, or we've been able to trust our military to go do whatever they're doing out there to keep us safe and allow us to have these luxuries that aren't connected to the land, the animals that inhabit it, or the weapons that we need to defend our lives and those of our loved ones. So those things are so connected together. So maybe there's that connection there. You're putting food on the table. You're so, when you think about this stuff all the time, it's only natural that protection side of it and that defense of life, because they're so intertwined. There's no disconnect.
For sure.
And the same things like I talk about in Savage Son, the same tools that we used to use as humans. I mean, when I say we, to put food on the table, well, you pick up that same implement to go defend the tribe, defend the family. Those were the same things. So maybe that's a part of it. You think about those things and then you're like, okay, I'm prepared. I can put food on the table here. All right, here we go. Now I can get some sleep.
It's funny because when we have things go wrong, when we're in the wilderness, whether that be a bear attack or flipping a raft or a loss of gear or something that breaks that is essential, it's funny how those trips become almost immediately a military type response. Whereas, when you're hunting, that's one level. And even when you're approaching animals, there's a level of that. And obviously, when you're hunting, somebody's not shooting at you or planning on shooting at you. But when you have something go wrong, flipping a raft, mauled by a bear, you start to kind of respond to things tactfully in that manner, because now you're no longer really worrying about the hunt. The reason you were there is over with or needs to be compartmentalized and stored away for a little bit until you address this immediate fear or issue right in front of you if somebody's having a heart attack. Or I had a guy that I was fly fishing one time. He had a seizure in the middle of a super dangerous river and just in the Talkeetna River in Alaska and just started floating downstream. And so you have these things, you start to respond right away. But I can definitely appreciate how the two are intertwined.
John Norris. John is the author of the book Hidden War: How Special Operations Game Wardens Are Reclaiming Wildlands from the Drug Cartels. For more than 2 decades, he served as a game warden for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. During his time as a game warden, he helped develop and lead the Marijuana Enforcement Team, an elite tactical unit targeting drug cartel operations on California's public lands. Here's John.
When did you find out that, hey, there's a little more of the, not the law enforcement as far as checking tags and making that sort of thing, but as far as, hey, there are some serious people out here doing the marijuana grows, protecting those crops. There's some serious crimes going out here that I'm going to be involved with figuring out where my place is as a warden dealing with these sorts of things, protecting the environment, protecting these animals, whatever it might be. When did you find out that, is that in the academy or did you know it before going in? Like, when did you know there was going to be so much of a, I don't know what the right word is, but a law enforcement tact to what you were going to be doing?
Yeah, the diversity of what we did on what I call the traditional role was pretty, ingrained in the academy. And in the academy, we had some really hardcore tactical officers, military veterans, Vietnam vets, Greg Orr, who his call sign is Rock in both my books. The battle experience he has around what you and I have experienced domestically and abroad was intense, especially what he saw in Vietnam, especially losing a special forces brother from an A team that's still MIA. So when he comes into being a game warden from a life of military special operations and then, a standard law enforcement, he was hard in a good way, doing felony car stops, knowing we're going to go up against spotlighters that are not only poaching animals, but where I'm at in Riverside County, it's probably gangbangers coming over with assault weapons, and they've done drive-bys. Now they're just out, pleasure killing, for lack of a better term. And those were the type of crimes that I had to get embedded and really understand and get my tactics solid, even as a, early 20s pup, starting my career to deal with that when I went to Riverside, in addition to all the fishing and the stream bed alteration, everything from falconers and, inspecting mews for guys that fly falcons and teaching hunter education to kids. The conservationist is you. I know that's near and dear to you with your kids, like we talked about. And, one of the most pleasurable parts of my career was that aspect. But that was the traditional stuff that I signed up for, loved, couldn't look back, had no, regrets or reservations. And that's what I wanted to do. And the first 10 to 12 years of my career, that's what I focused on. The whole cartel, trespass grow, embedded eco-terrorism in America, none of that was really known to us at the time. The cartels were just starting to come across the border on the San Diego side and starting to embed in our national forests, like the Cleveland National Forest, Anza Borrego Park that you're familiar with in San Diego County. That was all starting in the early to mid 80s. So they hadn't really been embedded in America that long. U.S. Forest Service was working with them a little bit. Some of the military National Guard teams were helping from a LPOP or a observation point only at the time. But it was really when I got back up to Silicon Valley, when I took that transfer and had promoted to be a lieutenant in 2005, right before that in 2004. And the first chapter of the first book, War in the Woods, really goes into this, that I discovered my first, trespass cartel grow in an area that was so sensitive environmentally. It was the perfect storm for the worst type of situation. And just to abbreviate that and not, go too far into the book for time's, issues. Good friend of mine that was a wildlife biologist that we all grew up with, excuse me, working on his master's thesis on steelhead trout, red-legged, yellow-legged frog, all these threatened and endangered species, literally in the headwaters of Coyote Creek. That Henry Coast State Park, where I met that game warden, back in college, the headwaters feed that. And that is one of the last steelhead migrating streams that goes all the way to the Pacific Ocean out of the South San Francisco Bay. That's how sensitive this waterway is. And the fish that migrate and everything he was studying for this 5-year study. And about year 3 in 2004, I get a call, and GI, codenamed in the first book, says, John, this is something crazy, man. One of my streams is flowing great. It's April. We have all this winter runoff, fish, fry, frogs, everything's good. But I got a totally dry stream on one end, all this plastic and junky debris in a dry stream, and everything's dead. And that's,
Wow.
Oh crap, what does that mean? And so from a traditional standpoint, I'm thinking, is a cattleman diverting water for a cattle operation? Is it an agricultural water diversion? That's typically the stream bed alteration cases, Jack, that we would see on the traditional side. So I put him in the truck, take him to the top of the mountain. We dive deep.
Just you, without a partner, just you and him?
Just me and him. That's it. Yeah. In those days, if we had a ride along that was savvy and we weren't going into anything that we, kind of had a threat matrix workup like we would operationally now, it didn't have any clues whatsoever that it would be anything but a typical sedate water diversion. So I throw him in the truck. We go.
And with that, what do you have on you? Like without being prepared ahead of time, like knowing, hey, we're going into this grow. What do you have on you? What is it? Just a sidearm, or do you have a rifle in the truck as well? What are you carrying at this point?
Yeah, that was before we had an official battle rifle, which I'll talk about with you being another firearms guy like myself. We were carrying a hodgepodge of stuff as long as we could qualify, get them armor inspected, and I ran an M4. I ran an M4 with a Trigicon ACOG on it. I ran, with bonded rounds in the 5.56, knowing that I was going into very brushy terrain, and having, hunted all my life with bigger calibers and knowing how these bullets perform. I could kind of pick my ammo at the time. So that was cool. I had the M4. I had my Glock duty pistol, Glock 22, 40 calibers, what we were issued at the time. And, my partner, GI, who I'm going in with, very savvy and proficient with weapons. Field craft is top notch, second to none in the woods. A lot of hunting time, but he's an unarmed civilian and I can't really have him armed on an operation. So he's a very good asset, but doesn't have a firearm. And we're going to go in here. I've got a radio, I've got a cell phone, but of course we dive into a canyon. There's no radio coverage. There's no cell service. And we're going straight down a mountain about 1,000 feet. And then we get into the canyon. It's like a pristine Grand Canyon of waterway, and it's bone dry. And there's the water diversion where the cartel guys have built up a check dam. They've got a water pipe going down a dry creek. And it's kind of follow the rabbit hole, what are you going to find at the end of the pipe? And sure enough, as we stalked carefully and concealed down through that canyon, we started to see, 18 to 24 inch tall marijuana plants on both sides of the creek, all the bank vegetation gone, which is a big environmental problem. Then we started to see, camouflaged encampments and hooches and a kitchen and a cooking area, big bags of fertilizer. Had no idea at the time these EPA banned poisons that we started to learn about much later in the game. They were all in there. The carbofuran, the metaphos, the nerve agent, that's banned from use in America for any agriculture. Cartels have to smuggle it through the border infiltration or from the oceans in Pangas, get it in Tijuana. And then we run into two growers, and they're in OD green BDUs, and they've got their, their cartel monikers embedded and, kind of woven into their belt buckles, and the patron saint stuff I talk about in Hidden War, and, that whole, kind of ideology of what type of culture that encourages as far as environmental destruction and drug crimes and human trafficking. And they've got AKs and they've got machetes. And Jack, no joke, I think about all the operations you've done in your career and all the ones I've done on my side of the world. And I have never seen guys that were so protected knowing no one was in the area, yet so situationally aware.
Wow.
I mean, their field craft was top notch. They would be a 2-man unit, And as they were tending their plants, they would whisper and not talk. One would always, every couple minutes, look over the shoulder and check the 6 o'clock, check the tail gunner, like a tail gunner on a stack, like we would run. And whoever was like chopping plants or tending a water hose, the other one would kind of sit back and just have that situational awareness and be like a cover guy.
Wow.
And there's no.
So when you run into these first two guys, are you like coming around, like come behind a tree and you're like, and you like steering the headlights, you both see each other?
No.
Or do you see them from a ways off, or you get the binos out and you're like what was that situation like?
Thankfully it wasn't the former, man. Because if we had gone eye to eye and not knowing what I would know later in that situation, it was going to be a gunfight for sure.
And you're on foot. Do you have your M4 with you, or do you leave that in the car?
Oh no, the M4. As soon as I dive out of it, and as soon as I lose sight of the truck, the rifle goes with me. On any, and that was before any special operations unit. It's just how we trained our guys, and our firearms training was really state of the art. It was keeping up with the best law enforcement. We were getting a lot of stuff back from the sandbox from you guys on the military side, especially special forces. We were training with independently. I got a lot of training in Southern California when I was down with Forest Service, starting my career with the 3rd Special Forces Group, which was freaking fantastic. I got to jump in with that opportunity, and that doesn't normally happen. So it was starting early. And then fast forward to this Silicon Valley drop into this canyon. We are just hugging the bank, just kind of using field craft like we're stalking animals, going in real quiet, doing slow peaks, moving slow.
Okay.
And when we got to see them and they had their backs to us and were kind of above us a little bit, but we were in a cut bank in the creek below them, we hugged the bank, we held tight, we were pieing out real careful. I always carry a tiny pocket pair of binoculars. We love those little Leica, those 8x20s or those 10x22s. Yeah. It's something I bought for the entire Met team when we formed up the unit, because those little binos you can, put up so slowly without being a target indicator, very little movement, and peek out, and you can really see details. And sure enough, that's when I saw what they were doing. And they were maybe at the time 50 yards away. They were not far. And we just had to hold position as they started to work our way. And I was waiting for that, here we go moment, ready to go. And just not the situation I wanted to happen with an unarmed civilian with me. No radio coverage. This was going to be a hard one to explain for sure if I went loud. And they got to about 15 yards and they tended some plants very, very close to us. I mean, it was crazy. And then they made that hook and drifted out of the canyon and doubled back. Whoa. So that was an eye opener. And once we got them out of the area, I looked at DI and Jack, I just went, all right, man, we got the location marked. We got a ping. Let's get out of here. We kind of did a quiet bounding overwatch uphill and out, got to the truck and just had that processing moment when I got to coverage. And then what's next, man? What does a game warden do in a situation like that? I just saw what I would later learn is the biggest environmental criminal we have in California and now in 25 other states for just the cannabis side of things. Had no idea they were involved in running human trafficking operations all over the country like they do now. Mm-hmm. You look at the synthetic fentanyl killing so many people from dirty labs back east. That's all generated by these same cartel groups. It's just a different division of work they do in their business model. The prescription drug, the opiates, the gun running, the children's sex trafficking, it's all embedded. So we were actually stumbling onto a level of environmental criminal that affected the country on a deeper level beyond just wildlife. But we didn't know any of that yet. So that was the first exposure. And then bringing in a task force of drug officers that, focus on that. And now I'm going to just be the advisor because I've never done this. That was technically the first operation I went on where we did an apprehension attempt, a full eradication of a grow. And then unfortunately, because it wasn't SOPs for the non-conservation guys on the team to actually clean that mess up environmentally and bring the waterway back, we didn't reclaim the grow site, but it was sure an eye-opener. And that started the direction long-windedly of where I would go next into building Met eventually and getting the right guys and where we're at now.
Cameron Haynes. Cam is a bow hunter, endurance athlete, and author. His new New York Times bestselling book, Endure: How to Work, Outlast, and Keep Hammering, is a memoir that tells the story of how a passion for hunting inspired a lifestyle dedicated to fitness, distance running, and backcountry adventure. Here's Cam.
You talk about something that is very unique to you that you've shared once on social media, and I was one of the few that caught it before you took it down, and you talk about it in here, and that's counting coup. And I remember it was probably 2 years ago, and I remember that I watched it. I went back to watch it again because I still remember what you wrote under there, and it's 2 years later. And I remember you took it down. I'm like, oh, okay, took that thing down, but it was, and you wrote in there, that you don't usually share this, but this is what you do. Like this is like what you do. And it's not like a one-time thing, but you don't usually share it, and you shared it.
Right.
And then someone in the book, you explain why you took it down. Someone called you and you talked about it. But can you explain counting coup and what that means to you? Because I think it's so powerful and so unique to you. And that you shared that stood out to me. I haven't forgotten it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was, counting coup is kind of a Native American thing, and they would do it with their enemies. If they could get in and instead of kill the enemy, put their hands on them. And a key for the Native Americans would be like their enemy, they might lock eyes and realize I could be dead, but I'm not. And so that was counting coup, one tribe against another. It would be an example. And then if they did that, then they would put an eagle feather on the staff. If they tried to count coup, ended up getting injured, that eagle feather would be dipped in red and still on their staff. So it was like this form of bravery or respect, or I guess that'd be the best way to describe it. But to me, is like I wanted to get to an animal that I killed and be there when its life left, and just show my respect, because and non-hunters have a hard time with this, about how much we respect these animals in the country, and everything involved in the hunt. It's in our DNA, and it's what makes me who I am. But so I've killed a few bear, and as I run the arrow through them, they take off. And if I can get there before they die and touch them and be with them as that life leaves, to me, that's like I'm giving my respect to an animal I killed. And I've told him on that video, like I think that you saw, is like, it's okay. Thank you. Sorry, but this is what I do, and you can go now. And it's people would even hunters might have a hard time with that. So Wayne, who owns the bow rack here, he's the one who called me, and I know he's in my corner. And he said, I'm worried about how this might be perceived, and I thought I tried to explain it, everything that it meant to me in the words, but still it's like, so, bears sometimes do death moans. So when you hit them in the lungs and they're dying, they'll do a death moan, which sounds pretty haunting in the woods. And so all that wrapped up in a hunter chasing a wounded animal and touching him and saying those words, and the bear death moaning, it's intense. But to me, that power is like, we kill to survive every day. I mean, every human life out there, there's death associated with it. So to me, it's just like accepting that, and also honoring it, and honoring that animal for giving its life to me. But people who don't realize that their existence costs lives, they don't understand that. But yeah, that's a point to counting coup to me.
Yeah, no, it's so powerful. And I think, I don't even think you knew that it was being filmed on that one. I think somebody Johnny was running behind you maybe, or somebody was running behind you videoing it and gave it to you after. So
right.
It was,
I know. I never said, hey, let's film this.
Yeah. I think you said that in that, I mean, it's 2 years ago. I still remember that in what you wrote there, which makes it even more powerful. Once again, that being authentic piece. But that was, and I love that you explain it in here. It's just, it's amazing. And speaking of the anti-hunter stuff, you do talk about it in here, and we can leave that for people that pick up the book, because obviously we're hunters. Got a couple of things you say in here about that. Another line that stood out to me was that when was the last time a hunter threatened an anti-hunter's life? And it happens to you, I don't know, daily?
It does.
Quite a bit.
It goes back to that. I don't think they understand life and death and respect life. So hunters, they understand that connection. They're not going to threaten. They're not going to make a threat like that, because we understand what death means. I mean, we've seen it. We've been around it. They don't. They're like not really in reality. They're in this fantasy land where nothing dies. Everybody's happy. I don't know how they think. But so to them, threatening death isn't that big of a deal. But yeah, I mean, hunters don't do it, because we get that connection.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it in those terms before. So when you wrote that in here, I was really, that was enlightening for me. And I've read a lot of these things and thought about these things a lot. So I really liked how you did that. And then you talk about the supermarket hitman.
Yeah. So they go, people buy steaks and hamburger and chicken and everything else. And it's just cellophane wrapped meat. So you're not really thinking about the animal that died to put that there. So essentially people who go and they buy those those meat products, they're paying a hitman to do the killing for them. They're still killing, but they're just trading money. They're trading money for that death. And so it's, we don't get out of here without there's death associated with, even if it's just living in this house, because, there's wood here, whatever animals were living here where this house was built, driving on the roads, displacing animals, killing animals. So it's like, you can't get away from it. It's just, you need to accept it. And that's hard for some people.
Oh yeah. I mean, talk about wheat fields, cornfields. I mean, it's amazing how people can go through life totally oblivious to that, because there is not that connection to the land, the animals that inhabit it anymore. Now we can go to the grocery store. We can call 911 if someone's breaking into your home. You don't have to pick up a weapon to defend yourself. And it's only for a very slim part of human history has this been possible. And COVID in 2020 maybe made some people think that, society is not maybe as stable as I thought.
Right.
And hopefully people took some steps to be more self-reliant, more prepared. I think a lot of people did get into hunting or reconnect with some of those roots, or reconnect with that DNA and that blood that's flowing through their veins. But society is certainly fragile, and it's only been like for the instant of human history where we've been able to not be good at the hunting and not be good at the fighting. But
we're pretty spoiled right now.
We are very spoiled, very comfortable. Very comfortable. Right. Yeah, you talk about being comfortable and uncomfortable in here. I love that chapter as well. And I want to be respectful of your time because I know you have to get to work, but there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on. And one is Joe Rogan saying there's enough cake for everyone. I love how you wove that in.
I know. It's so true. It's like he was the first one who really walked the walk in that regard, where I say, as I said earlier, men are competitive, and sometimes, some men will take another success as like a slight of their own achievements. Well, Joe, maybe he saw that, or maybe he is a discussion, but he just said, he goes, there's enough cake for everybody. You can win, they can win, everybody can have cake. And I was just like, man. And he exemplifies that, because he's been my biggest cheerleader. Actually, what I've told him is like, I wish I believed in myself as much as you believe in me, and that's true, because I don't, but he's like the ultimate cheerleader. And so it's kind of, it's that always stuck with me, where when he said there's enough cake for everybody, we can all succeed. Your success doesn't have to cost somebody else.
Exactly. Especially in this country. But I love how you wove that in. And then I wanted to ask you to share a story about Roy's buck, because Roy, obviously you talk about him on social channels. Your friendship is, what an incredible friendship you guys had. But the Roy's buck, like I got emotional reading that chat. I didn't think I was gonna get emotional reading Endure. I thought we were gonna be running through the woods and, hunting and all. And then that story got like really, really got me. What was that, getting that call and then going out the next morning and finding that buck?
Yeah. It was, what I say is I wouldn't be talking to you right now if it wasn't for Roy. It was Roy's the one who introduced me to bow hunting. Roy was, he was he was always like a very strong Christian and never wavered. And he would just have a positive impact on me. He always believed in me, had a positive impact on me, from not only introducing me to bow hunting, but through our whole lives. And, it's, when I got that call where he had fallen, and, my wife called and said, you need to call Jill, which is Roy's wife. And Roy had an accident. So I called her and I said, what's going on? She said, Roy's not coming home. And he'd been up sheep hunting and fell. And at that time that evening, I hit a buck, and I hit a buck a little low and a little back, big whitetail in Colorado. And so I didn't want to push it. So we backed out, and I figured, I got liver back there, and, it's going to go a little ways and die. But I didn't want to push it because animals can be very tough. And so it was in the middle of the night. It's like, or not in the middle of the night, but at like 11 when I got that call. I couldn't sleep all night. Roy, it was clear that he had died. He was laying up there. There was a guy with him, and could see him. He'd fallen 700 feet. And it was, it was clear that he had died. And so that's all I was thinking about all night is, that Roy was gone, and it was hard. And so I'm like, we went to look for this deer, and couldn't find it. Couldn't find blood, couldn't find anything. So we spread out, I was like, just tears streaming down my face all morning, just kind of felt fruitless out there looking around. And is Eastern Colorado. So big, like there's kind of like wheat fields or different crops out there. And CRP and Milo is what they eat out there too. So it just seems like expansive and seems like, mission impossible to find this deer. Anyway, we ended up finding it. And I feel like Roy, I wanted to find it. I wanted to have something positive. I wanted to have, I felt like he was watching down on us, and there's me and Kip Folks again, and some other guys. And we found this deer. And so then that to me, that's Roy's buck. And Roy's buck is sitting right here in the dining room right now. And it's just that white-tailed deer that I found the night after he'd fallen. And it was a really hard time. If I think about it too much, it's still, it impacts me. I have the tattoo on us of our last hunt right here on my arm. That's Roy there. And this is the moose I killed. And, the impact he had on me is changed my life. Yeah. And like I said, I wouldn't be here without him.
Yeah.
Robbie Kroger. Robbie is the founder of Blood Origins, an organization that brings together storytelling and conservation. Their mission statement is simple: convey the truth about hunting. Here's Robbie.
Gosh, for me, it's so important to have that connection with the land, and we're losing that, especially when it comes to our policymakers, our elected representatives. We're just losing that connection. And actually, back in the 50s, Dwight D. Eisenhower, he said, farming looks pretty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield. It just, what that really means is not just for farming, but for anything that you're disconnected from. But it's so interesting that we're at a point in our history where we can be so disconnected from the very thing that keeps us alive. So it is very, very strange to have that, to be at this stage as a society where that can be the case, because it couldn't have been the case for much of our time as human beings. Just this very, very slim size. Same thing with outsourcing protection for yourself and your family. Call 911 in a civilized society. You don't need to learn how to protect yourself. Okay. This tiny little sliver of human history, I don't even think it's true, but you think it's true. Whereas for the rest of human history, you knew that was not true. You had to step up to defend your life, your loved ones' lives, your tribe, and you had to put food on that table. You had to learn how to farm. You had to be connected to it. So getting out there with kids, especially, teaching them how to be connected to that land and to the things that keep them alive. I think there's not much more important and it gets them away from these devices. We get away from these devices. 100%. We get away from tweeting and Instagram and all the rest of it. That's why I love getting out there in places that don't have Wi-Fi, don't have cell service, and try to do that at least a few times a year with the kids. But so coming back to why you started this in the first place. One other thing. It is very interesting that the very people oftentimes that haven't put the requisite time, energy, and effort into studying the issues. Let's take lion hunting in Africa. It's so controversial, and it sounds. You see a picture. It's you watch The Lion King, all that sort of a thing. And then over lattes in New York and Los Angeles, you can pat yourself and your friends on your back because you saved these lions. Well, then when you actually fly over there, and what do you see? You see the people there poisoning lions, snaring lions, because now they have no value. They're killing crops. They can kill family member. So now they have. So it sounds great, and you think that you've done a great thing, banning lion hunting. Okay, well, guess what? Now you've killed female lions, male lions, the babies, all of them killed. And I saw the pictures when I went over there to Mozambique, just poisoned lions, snared lions, and it's ugly. So they did the exact opposite of what they were trying to do, which is tough. But if you don't study it, you don't know that you just wiped out a ton of lions by trying to save them.
Well, from a hunting perspective and the banning component, it makes sense. Think about it. It does in their minds, right? Stop hunting means you don't kill anything. You're saving wildlife. Okay, yes, technically you're right. However, when you bring in the idea of value, You bring in the idea of that thing now not having value any longer. So why do you want to keep it around? If it's taking goats, if it's taking cattle, if it's bothering humans, you won't want it around. So you're going to do, to your point, you're going to get rid of it in whatever mechanism, means you possibly can. And for the most part, all of those means and mechanisms are cruel and violent, and they don't really give us stuff on how that thing dies.
Yeah. End result, dead animal. It's tough. And then it's very interesting that a lot of those same people, the first people to call the exterminator when there's some cockroaches in the house or a mice infant, So that's interesting as well. There are cockroaches in my apartment, or I saw a mouse in my apartment. Quick, call the exterminator. Let's kill that thing. It's very interesting, the dynamic. But that's why I think, gosh, we got to just study and read and put in the time before you make a snap judgment based off someone else's tweet where they also didn't study the issue. But circling back around to why you started this in the beginning, to want to explain to your kids why we hunt. So along this journey, what do you tell them now after having been having developed Blood Origins, grown it into what you have, having studied this, having been out there, becoming a hunter, and now what do you tell your kids when they ask you now, Dad, why do we hunt?
I think the answer is complicated and simple at the same time, in that you can hunt for very different reasons, and there's many of them. But you develop that reason. And when you develop it, you understand the why, i.e., you may hunt because you enjoy organic meat, right? Coming from the field, you know exactly who touched it, you know where it comes from, you know how it died, the whole kit and caboodle. That is a why someone may hunt. Another why may be tied to population control, that you want to make sure that there's a balanced population in a certain area, in different parts of the world, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, as well as here in the US. Maybe you hunt because you truly value the conservation element of it, right? And you value the money that goes back. There's not many people that do it, but there are certain people that do it that way. Or you hunt because you're seeking adventure and you're seeking places that you potentially would never have gone to because of hunting. And you are seeking meeting different people and cultures and understanding that. Or you hunt because you do enjoy the sparring that is essentially you versus Mother Nature, you versus that wily animal that's on the mountain, and you're wanting to outwit it, outsmart it, and essentially sort of reverse yourself back to where we essentially came from. Like, what is in our blood? What is in our DNA? Our blood origins, which is chasing and hunting as we used to, as 200, 400, 500 years ago, 800 years ago, 1,000 years ago. In that you're not the alpha out there. Yes, you're a predator, but everything is against you. So there's many, many different whys for why you want to go hunting. I do not think that it is an acceptable answer. So when they say, well, Dad, we just like to kill things, I said, I don't think that's a very acceptable answer, because the statistics are not there that show that when someone hunts, and by definition, hunting is chasing and seeking, and failure inherently wrapped around those two things. Killing is this thing that is like a given. So go down to the local abattoir and you can kill all you want, or volunteer there, or go get a job at pulling the punch gun when cows come into the abattoir. So that's what I would say to my kids. That's what I'd say to a lot of people. And I think, again, the hunting community needs to understand that people hunt for various reasons. And some people hunt for that trophy, and that's okay. Some people hunt for food. That's okay. Some people hunt for adventure. That's okay. It's all tied to personal preference. But as long as you're being responsible, as long as you are acting in the right manner to give us a good name, give us a good image, and nobody should ever have an issue with you.
November 11th is Veterans Day, but at Navy Federal Credit Union, every day is Veterans Day. I've been a member since 1996, right after boot camp and right before I went to BUDS, or SEAL training. Navy Federal Credit Union is for active duty veteran DoD employees and their families. They offer resources like the VA Loans Hub and Best Cities After Service. They offer veteran employment assistance partnerships with nonprofits like The Mission Continues. They're a top VA home loan lender. They offer personal finance counseling. They offer 24/7 member service and are a growing community of over 1.8 million veterans just like you. Learn more at NavyFederal.org/veterans. Insured by NCUA, an equal housing lender. Brad Leone. In addition to being a popular chef, Brad Leone is also an avid outdoorsman who merges his passions in his new best-selling book, Field Notes for Food Adventure, Recipes and Stories from the Woods to the Ocean. Brad is known for his wildly popular online series on Bon Appetit's YouTube channel, It's Alive with Brad, and It's Alive Going Places. Here's Brad. What's been your experience with hunting and with talking to people about it and introducing them to hunting or starting that conversation?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think hunting got like a bad reputation, and had a bad voice for a while. And, I think there were a lot of bandits probably out there, and there probably still are, who aren't going by the rules and regulations and aren't in it for, the respect. But I know damn well a good percentage of them are, and some of the best people I know, especially when it comes to taking care of the planet and having respect for animals and just being overall humble, kind, beautiful people, tend to be, in my opinion, a lot of them are hunter and fishermen and just outdoorsmen. It's a religion for a lot of people, and a church, and I can relate to that. And then being able to tie it into food. I mean, yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, it's ancient, it's way more embedded in it than we want. And, unless you're growing your own almonds and milking them somewhere and and I don't know, growing tomatoes and, walking around your tiptoes and not crushing any ants, or, what I'm saying? Like, where do we stop? You know what I mean? And like, so I don't know. And like, for me, there's a major contradiction in it because, like, I'm going to jump around a little bit. Sorry. But like, when did we start? Like, why do we how come no one gives a shit about plants? You can eat the shit out of them. That life in this universe doesn't matter. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like, you can chomp away on anything as long as it's, and I understand there's different, they take different nervous systems and what we deem intelligent life forces in life, but like, as we're finding out, in our, big cocky human brains, is that plants and fungus and fish and other species are super intelligent, and like, I'm okay with eating all of them, but like, you gotta, because that's just, there isn't a better system yet. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't figured, I don't know. And I think at the end of the day, no one wants factory farming except for the prick doing it and making money. You know what I mean? Like, so like, people, the responses I've gotten from being able to do some hunting, like pheasant hunting and wild boar in Hawaii and fishing, is like, it's a respect, and it's just being transparent. Like, this is, if you're going to the supermarket and you're getting your ribeye or your salmon fillet from the Faroe Islands or whatever, you're just not seeing the, come on, like, it's all, it's just a little clean piece, and, no face anymore, no feathers, no nothing. This is happening on a massive scale. We 400 million pigs a year or whatever, fact check that number, but like, it's massive. So like, being able to harvest an animal, whether you're farming it yourself, and just being the accountability for what's going into it, because, as we found out, the industrialization of the food system certainly had some flaws and not the best interest for our health. It seems in some of the aspects, is hunting going to solve world hunger? No, obviously not, but good practicing and localization of it. COVID showed that too, how fragile that big monopolized systems are, and cyber attacks, like, things need to get a little more smaller and less monopolized in certain aspects when it comes to food. Right. And that also will be able to reduce the environmental impact and overall health, I believe. And, you go into the supermarket and look at some of the produce and the meat and like, we're unfortunate, don't get me wrong, that it's an option. And, financially is another thing. Good food's expensive, especially when you're buying it at a supermarket, So there's a lot of problems with it, but like, I guess to wrap that question up in a way, like, yeah, I think just the way it's been perceived is just, again, no one wants the bad practice. Everyone's sick of it. Let's just figure a better way out. There seems like a lot of people who are smarter at it and better at it than me that certainly are doing it. It's just, I don't know. I guess it's a big problem. Huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, COVID did open a few people's eyes for sure into how fragile society can actually be. And most of the world obviously deals with that. Here we're insulated from a lot of that, worrying about the next meal, malaria, like all these things that most of the rest of the world has to worry about. We're, fairly insulated in this country. And also makes you part of the process.
People dying of starvation. A lot of people, in the world, every year. And like, how much we waste? What? It's like 40 or something % of all food or something. It's like, it's wild.
It's insane. Yeah. There was, what was it? A book or like 3 or 4 years ago, a book or a video movie, I forget what it was, but just talking about how much waste there is. And that's the other part about hunting. Like when we put an elk on the table out there, nothing's wasted because we know where it came from and how much work went in. And that's the other part of it. Once you do it, I think once you're out there and you're doing it and you're bringing that food back and you're processing it and then you're cooking it, you're doing all those things, you're not wasting any of it. And then for me, it is shock just actually how inexpensive some things are at the supermarket, like knowing how much went in to what we just did with a mule deer or an elk or a moose or whatever it might be. And then seeing, $1.99 or, $5.99, like, amazing that it's, for me anyway, I'm like, how you had to raise that thing, you had to do all this, you had to transport it, you had to put it on a shelf, you're paying all these people at each one of those stages to get it there. I'm always like, wow, why is this only $5? I mean, it's crazy just how much goes into making that happen.
That's because they process it like a grain. It's just, it's a numbers thing. And it's so scaled that they can sell you this big, giant, weird pork loin that's as white as a piece of paper when you cook it and has, almost no fat on it. It's just like this big, weird, like that's not what a pig looks like. Like I've seen some really healthy pigs, whether wild or farmed, and like, man, that sometimes it can look like steak, like I can get nice and red and pink and beautiful fat on it. So once you once you see the light, I can't go back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like once I'm being able to, and where I live is great, man. I shot 2 deer this year, and not even hunting that aggressively, and a bunch of geese and some, and we got some pheasant and some tuna. We go fishing right here and spear fishing and sea bass, and being able to just process that with some friends, and then being able to grow vegetables and stuff. I just moved up here, but in the next couple of years, man, I want to get this place where we could be, providing a lot of the food that we need through, just growing, we get great sun and soil. Like it'd be crazy not to. Good water. And then having the ocean and the land, it's just it reminds me of like friends in Hawaii, right? They just have that like ocean and land that they can, really get dialed in and provide off of.
I want to thank my friends at Black Rifle Coffee for sponsoring the Danger Close podcast. I've been a huge fan for the longest time. Drink Black Rifle Coffee every day. And if you keep your eyes peeled, you will notice that perhaps Chris Pratt is wearing a Black Rifle Coffee t-shirt, not unsimilar to this one, in the Amazon series adaptation of The Terminal List. Now you can go to blackriflecoffee.com/dangerclose and use code DangerClose20 at checkout for 20% off your purchase and your first coffee club order. Black Rifle Coffee, America's coffee. Keep crushing. John Barklow. John is a former U.S. Navy diver who spent the majority of his time in uniform in the SEAL teams, where we met back in 1997 at SEAL Team 5. Upon retirement, he took the lead instructor position at the Naval Special Warfare Cold Weather Training Facility in Kodiak, Alaska, where he honed his hunting and survival skills, developing and testing gear for special operators working in harsh environments. He's currently the big game product manager at Sitka Gear in Bozeman, Montana. Here's John.
when did you get to that point where you're like, okay, I've done what I can here in Kodiak. This has been a good run, and now it's time to move on? Because you had a solid run there, and I mean, I can't think of anybody who had more of an influence on naval special warfare, mountaineering, warfare tactics, gear than you did during that time frame. What made you want to move on? I mean, you had a long run there, so it wasn't like you just did a couple of years and moved on. Like, you were all in up there, and it was awesome to see how things evolved and see your impact on the community. But what moved you on to the next stage in life?
I just think realizing that I had done everything I wanted to do and a lot more. We had just got done writing, I forget what it was, but basically the TTPs for cold weather warfare. And quite frankly, I mean, at a certain point, you can't keep up with the young guys. Like, I was able to keep up because my skill set was so much higher that I could rely on that. But once I went past 40 and a couple years past that, I just realized that not only was I, kind of lost half a step, I'd done everything I wanted to do, but quite frankly, it was time for other people to kind of take the reins. And that's the only way things advance, right? Because if not, then it's going to be me and my mindset, and this is the way we do it. Now, I don't ever want to be that guy. And so I had to really put the ego in check and go, all right, it's time to move on. This was going to come to an end at some point anyways. I'd rather leave on my own terms than someone else's. And so I really started to think about that. And I would tell you, to be honest, probably 2 years prior to me actually retiring and moving on, I knew I was ready to go. But I'm a person that wants to, I definitely want to have a plan.
Oh yeah.
At least a direction to go. And so that's kind of when I started saying, what do I like to do? I wanted something I was going to be passionate about, because for 26 years, I'd been passionate about every single day, waking up, and the guys I worked with. And I knew it wasn't going to be the same, but I wanted something that was kind of the civilian equivalent if I could get it. And, I wanted to work in an industry where people enjoyed themselves and kind of had, some fun. And so hunting it was either hunting or the mountaineering avenue I wanted to go. Hunting seemed to be the better fit for me at the time. And literally, I remember sitting straight up in bed from a dead sleep at like 2 a.m. And the thought went through my head, go to work for Sitka Gear.
Nice.
I didn't know anybody there. I had nobody in the hunting industry I could reach out to, and all of it. I just said, that is what I need to do. And so I just kind of, starting to collect and get all my stuff in order to kind of drop my papers and leave. And I get an email from a guy at Gore. So the military side of Gore used to come up because we were a schoolhouse, and they would run things by us like, hey, try this, or hey, try that, or does this have any interest? And they had some really stupid stuff. Some of it was good, but a lot of it was crazy, like trying to swim so you imagine a dry suit, like our mass suit, with like a bunch of like a turkey suit with like a bunch of,
oh geez.
And I'm like, wow, you guys want to put that on and go swim in the ocean?
Wow.
Like, you're going to drown.
Yeah. Like,
this is a dumb idea. Anyways, so one of those guys reached out and said, hey, he had no idea I was retiring. He said, hey, do you realize there's a job at Sitka? And Gore acquired Sitka. He said, I think you'd be perfect for the job. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I applied. And I'm really getting close to my window of getting out, like within a couple months. Still nothing solid. I was going to move back to Salt Lake. I had a home there. I had some family there. So I had a fall, that's where I was going. I knew that. And anyways, I go through the process, great interview. And they said, the answer is not no, it's just not now. Well, what I didn't realize was the job I was applying for, which was this big game product manager, it didn't exist until just a few months prior when they were restructuring the company. And so I was going to be the first one. And the person who I was kind of taking the reins from was the founder of the company, our mutual friend, Jonathan. So of course, try to fill those shoes, right? So that was so anyways, they went through this long deal. I end up leaving Alaska, move to Salt Lake, get a job at Beyond Clothing with my dear friend Rick Elder, doing some really cool specialized stuff for some different units, and I was enjoying it, but I knew it was not going to be the ultimate thing I wanted to do. And
long term.
Sure enough, Sitka calls back, or the hiring people call back, and they're like, "Hey, you said to keep us on your short list and that you were, always available to talk." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." "Well, the founder wants to talk to you. Would you be willing to talk to him?" So I talked to him. I was in Seattle at the time, and there's going to be a backstory to this. So, anyways, I talked to Jonathan on the phone, and he's like, "Hey, man, we want to bring you out to Bozeman to interview." I go out there. My first real job interview, like ever in my life, right? So I show up there, a big, like 8-hour long interview process. I'm in the Bozeman airport drinking Willie's whiskey, like it's going out of style, wondering if I screwed it up, and my one chance to ever work for the company was gone, And Jonathan called me. I'd been out of the office 2 hours. And he called me, he said, do you really want this job? Like, you really know what you're getting yourself into? And I said, I want the job. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. And he goes, fair enough. And so that's how, basically I got the job. Well, what I didn't realize, Jack, is that you and Jonathan are friends. And the way Jonathan tells the story anyways, that you and he are riding a chairlift out of probably Tahoe somewhere, Squaw.
Yeah, Squaw. I think we're Alpine, because Squaw might have been, anyway, Squaw or Alpine. I think it was Alpine that day.
And I don't know if you asked the question or however my name came up, and Jonathan realized that you and I knew each other and we had worked together. And that's literally what got me the phone call with Jonathan and ultimately the job. So I owe you my job and my current career. Seriously, it's all about who you know, right? And as you know, like in our previous world, and I would say even in life now in general for everybody, like reputation is everything. Hard to get, easy to lose. But no, I owe you that. And I think I've told you that story before, but I'm like, you've got to be kidding me how all this, comes together. So yeah, I've been doing that almost 7 years now. And
cool. No, I remember it so well.
And loving it.
I remember that so well because I built up all this leave up until through my last deployment to Iraq. And that would be the last one that I would actually tactically maneuver guys on the battlefield. And after that, it was my troop commander tour. And after that, it's admin. And for those listening, it sounds very impressive.
You weren't too psyched about that.
I was not.
I remember you weren't too psyched about that.
And I was lucky that I had those enlisted years because I was creeping up on 20 at the time anyway. So same thing as with you. I had that couple years to take a breath, to look around, to study, think about transition, figure out that, hey, aligning passion and mission together in the post-military chapter of life is of vital importance, and maybe something you should put some thought into. And so I was very lucky that I had that time to do that. But point being, I had accumulated quite a few days of leave over the previous 17, 18 years. And I started taking that when I got to Buds and as the COO and started taking that leave with my family because the pendulum was on the side of the team for all those other years.
Yeah.
And I decided to get back that I was going to get out and move on and pursue this passion for writing this next dream. And so I started taking leave and started going to the mountains with the kids and meeting up with Jonathan up in Tahoe and that sort of thing. So yeah, I remember distinctly we were on the chairlift. I met him at I think Squaw was closed for some reason or for whatever reason. We ended up going to Alpine. And we're on that chairlift and we're just talking about transition and future and how things are going at Sitka and what I'm thinking about as I get ready to get out and all that sort of thing. And he's like, hey, do you know this John Barklow guy? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, we're thinking about him for a position or something along those lines. And I was like, snatch that guy up right now. Go to schnees.com, check out all they have going on. They have a ton of great things on their website. Check them out on Instagram. But today I want to talk about boots because I love everything that they have going on up there, but I probably have 10 different pairs of their boots. But I started with these right here, the Granites. And I love these boots. I got my first elk in these, muzzleloader hunt, New Mexico, about a decade ago. These are the exact same boots right here. So they have some miles on them. They have been to Alaska after bear, wolf, moose, and I just love these boots. So if I go into the backcountry
and I have some weight on my back, and I'm planning on coming out even a little heavier, then these are the boots that I take. I was wearing these in Kamchatka, Russia on a bear hunt where I went to do some research for Savage Son. And for those of you who know Savage Son, that's my third novel in the James Reese series. And you know, a lot of it takes place there. And then there's a little story that I fictionalized and dropped into Alaska in that story, near kind of closer to the beginning. But these are the boots that I wore. Absolutely love these boots right here, and love all the people at Schnee's, and just can't say enough good things about them. But they are handcrafted in their Italian boot factory. That's right. You'll find no mass production machinery there, just a team of world-class boot makers doing their thing. Schnee's only sells boots directly to you, the consumer. This means there is no middleman markup like other boot companies out there. That means that they can put higher emphasis on the materials that go into their boots, and you get more boot for the money. Higher quality materials and more boot for the money. From the leathers to the tread, every Schnee's boot is made from the absolute finest materials available, backed by Schnee's industry-leading customer service and support. If you have a question or need a solid boot recommendation for your hunt, give them a call. You'll actually get a person on the line who wears the boots and is ready to help. There are a lot of boots out there in their lineup, so definitely give them a call. Let them know what you're going to be doing, and they can make a recommendation for you. When you shop at schnees.com, that is SCHNEES.com, make sure you use the promo code Jack21. When you do, you'll get 10% off your pair of Schnee's boots and logo wear. Again, that is SCHNEES.com, promo code Jack21. These handmade hunting boots usually sell out fast, so grab your pair today. Take care of your feet. Don't compromise. Upgrade to Schnee's today. Jim Shockey. Jim is an award-winning outdoor writer, wildlife photographer, videographer, naturalist, wilderness guide, filmmaker, and outfitter. He's the host of Jim Shockey's Hunting Adventures, The Professionals, Uncharted, and Shock Therapy on the Outdoor Channel. Here's Jim.
So when did you make this transition then to becoming an outfitter, or did you apprentice first? And did you have to go through this Canada have that kind of a guide program where you work your way up, kind of like a Canada or Alaska has those apprenticeship program, or not programs, but the years you have to spend at these different levels? How did that transition from doing this art and selling this art transition into becoming an outfitter?
Well, I had 3 stores in Vancouver, antique stores, art stores, and Folk Art Interiors was the name. And I in between, the slow days, and there were slow days, I started writing. So this would have been 1984. I wrote my first hunting article, and always my intention from a young age has been in the hunting industry. I didn't know if I'd be, Bill Jordan selling camo patterns or T-shirts. I didn't know. I just wanted to be in the outdoor, hunting, fishing industry somehow. Thank goodness I didn't know about mountain climbing back then, being born in Saskatchewan. I'm telling you, I would have been the 14,000 or the 14,000 meter peaks, or what are they?
Well, you've done, it looks like you've done quite a bit of that type of thing, especially if people go back and watch some of the Uncharted stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But I would, those draw me like a moth to a flame. I would have died on the mountain. Because to me, unlike Ed Beester's, it said, it's, what is it? Imperative. Getting to the top is optional. Getting down is imperative. But I didn't live my life like that. It was, no, attaining the goal was imperative. Yeah. And then figure out a way to get home. If you have to jump, you jump, but I would have died. So I'm glad I didn't know about that. But I did, I started writing for hunting magazines back in 1984 as I was doing the ethnocentric art. And you go get old country living magazines. 1984, actually, I dabbled in modeling as well.
There you go. That's in the book. There we go.
Vogue magazine. You can look it up. 1984 September. There,
That's amazing. In the same jacket that you describe in there?
Yeah. That's
incredible. I love it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's just like back to what we were talking about earlier. You get one life. So why not live the life that you were destined to live, not a life that someone else tells you have to live or should live, or for whatever reason. I'm a doctor's son, so you got to be a doctor. No, you don't. My dad was a road construction superintendent, and a heavy duty mechanic. I'm sure and a pilot that he had to stop flying when he got married because he couldn't afford, to actually fly his own airplane. So,
wow.
So he gave that up. He read every single airplane magazine that ever existed and had to live vicariously through a 49-cent magazine and listen to the airplanes talk on his little, I don't know, VHF, whatever channel they're on. But he couldn't fly. Didn't have the money, had to raise kids, and bought one gun in his life that got stolen eventually out of my safe in our ranch. But anyway, that's another story. You get one life, so live it. I say, people are afraid of failing. Afraid of, I don't know if I can do that, and then what if I fail? And I say, if you spend your whole life sitting on a couch at home, worried about what might happen, nothing ever will. That'll be it.
Yeah.
Your entire life will be on that couch. Nothing happened. Good job. You got to get out there and try things. And to me, I've never been afraid to try. I've suffered the slings and arrows. It doesn't really hurt that bad. It's like, you don't like me, really? I'm no less a person because I fail. If that novel never gets published, it won't be because I'm a lesser. I don't take that personal. I know how good it is.
Yeah,
I know how good I am. I know what I've done. So that's what, when you live your life true to who you are, you never have a regret, ever. Yeah. I can't even imagine being on my deathbed and, there was one thing I wish. No, there's nothing. And you lived it. I don't know if they're in the thousands, hundreds. Lots of people that live that same thing.
Yeah.
And that's when you can look somebody in the eye, anybody in the eye, and say, yeah, I'm your equal. There's nobody better. There may, equal, yes, but nobody better. And it sounds arrogant, but it's not. It's just who you are. And this is the best I can be. And that's how I've always lived my life, fearlessly and as honestly, truthfully, with honor. All those good things.
Yeah, that is amazing. That is amazing. And I know we're coming up on time. I could talk to you for hours and hours, but I love what you just said right there. So I might want to finish it off on that, because like you said, so many people, just for whatever reason, they do spend time thinking about that failure and worried about that failure and not getting off that, not giving it a shot, and not knowing that, hey, these failures are going to build this character that I can then turn future, I can turn that into wisdom going forward. And then I can pass along these lessons to my kids so that we all get better and get stronger as a family, as a society, and we keep moving forward. So that's, for me, that's kind of the, I don't know, when I look at what's going on out there today and I look at our three kids here and all the distractions that they have in the world that they're, even if they're, we're shielding, it's not really shielding because they're getting these inputs all the time, all day, every day, from the devices to the teachers to wearing masks to just seeing people in masks and all that sort of thing. It's just it's a strange kind of feeling that's out there in the air. And so I always try to encourage people to get into pages of books, get into like this one right here, this amazing book that you wrote right here. We're going to come up with a plan. We're going to get this out there because it's so special. It's so incredible. But I encourage everybody to get in the pages of these novels, get in the pages of these books, put the requisite time, energy, and effort into the study of history so that we can make good decisions for future generations, because both of us live in countries where people sacrifice so much so we could have these freedoms and these options and opportunities that we do. And whether it was in our families or if it was people we didn't even know, for the most part, sacrificing everything so that we could be free. And we owe them that time spent in the pages of these books so that we can make good decisions going forward. And we're not discrediting their memory, discrediting what they did for us by taking away these freedoms that we've been given. So, we're gonna figure out how to get this thing out there, because it is so special. Thank you for tuning in to the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Navy Federal Credit Union. For full episodes and links to the books, be sure to visit the show notes. You can follow me at Jack Carr USA on the social channels, officialjackcarr.com. That is the website. You can go there to sign up for the newsletter, click on shop for the merch. And until the next time, take care out there, be safe, stay strong, keep fighting.